In this video, we will explain a data-driven approach to succeed with Amazon SEO. This talk will give you an overview of how to apply a data-driven approach to optimize Amazon listing and organic ranking performance, which are important to drive profitable sales on Amazon. Today, our guest is Otman from DataHawk company that helps Amazon sellers to run their business by providing an in-depth analytics and insights in their application. If you want to try DataHawk, find the link below in the video description. And this video is also hosted together with Listed Lease. She works with different Amazon brands. And of course, if you find this video helpful, don't forget to click like button below and subscribe to our channel for more videos. Hello, Otman. It's nice to have you here. Could you please tell us what you do and how you help Amazon sellers?
Hello, Augustas. Thanks for having me. So I'm Otman from DataHawk. DataHawk is a software platform that helps brands, resellers, and agencies better pilot their business on Amazon. We have a set of solutions that help people with search engine optimization within Amazon, product data analytics in the sense of monitoring and benchmarking metrics related to products, market research and intelligence, and finally, sales and advertising reporting.
All right. And can you tell us what you will be sharing with us today in your presentation?
Sure. So today we're going to talk about search engine optimization and more specifically how to succeed on Amazon with SEO and a data-driven approach, because it's really important to actually be data-driven when approaching this topic on Amazon.
All right. All good. So let's jump to the slides.
Cool. Let's start. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk today about succeeding on Amazon with SEO and a data-driven approach. First of all, why talk about being data-driven and so forth? The reason is that, as you guys know, it's super hard to sell successfully on Amazon. The reason being the fact that there are signals everywhere, so much so that no human can keep up. Success on Amazon has increasingly become algorithmically driven. We talk a lot about this black box ranking algorithm and so forth that's eventually controlling your fate. Also, competition is crazy, right? Barriers to entry are increasingly getting lower, and competition is global and fierce. Data is scattered everywhere. For all those of you that are on Seller Central, you know how it's a pain in the neck to collect data from various reports, to crunch it, and to extract insights out of it. Standards are extremely high, and margins are increasingly squeezed with rising fees and CPCs combined with an increase in pricing war. So this has made it become some sort of a law of the survival of the fittest, so much so that merchants that are now succeeding are extremely data-driven and disciplined. You must have seen this in with other people you talk to and other friends and in seller communities. But today, most of the merchants, especially those that are doing a significant number of sales, are actually using a data-driven approach and analytics to better pilot their businesses on Amazon. There's also a big churn, if we want to use this kind of word, in the seller space and the merchant space, in the sense that a lot of the brands and merchants that have been doing super well a few years ago don't exist now anymore. So this also means that competition is super fierce, and it's really super important to stay up to date and up one's game. Something also that's super interesting, and which is the reason why we're talking about SEO today, is the fact that it's increasingly becoming pay to play, right? You've all heard that Amazon is now the third biggest advertising player globally after Google and Facebook. They do 12 or 13 billion, I think it is, in ad spend as of 2019 or 2020. And so now it's not about are you using Amazon advertising anymore. The ship has sailed. It's more about how good are you in it, right? And it is said that, according to some studies, that 8% of the product views on Amazon are stemming actually from sponsored listings. So that's great, 8%. That's what's interesting is that this was barely 3% a couple of years ago, right? Back in early 2017. And to some extent, we may argue that this will continue to increase, right? That the position and weight of advertising is really getting significant. But I want to argue about something else, which is the fact that this also means that it's still an SEO game, right? Because if 8% is coming from sponsored ads, or maybe it's become 10% now or 12, then it still means that circa 90% is still coming organically, right? So that's the corollary to what we mentioned earlier. And winning SEO wise is paramount because that's free traffic. Eventually, that's why people are building brands on Amazon. That's why they're selling on Amazon as a channel, because it's traffic that allows them to kind of bypass high customer acquisition costs that they would get on their own store that would run on a CMS platform, where they would be bringing traffic from Facebook, Instagram, and Google, and so forth. So that's why it's still an SEO game. It's also said that almost 70% of all product purchases are made on the first page of search results of a keyword. So that's super interesting, right? And 70% of all the clicks go to the first 3 products. So for all of you that have a brand registered brand on Amazon, as you go to brand analytics, you can actually see this data, right? You can see the first 3 products. And usually for non-branded search terms, you will notice that the first 3 products, they usually get anywhere between maybe 40% to 70% of the clicks and a lot of the sales as well. To kind of show you to what extent keyword rankings and SEO is really super important on Amazon, I want to take as an example this study that was run on Google. To some extent, Google and Amazon can be compared really closely, right? Both of them are search engines. On Amazon, you make purchases with a search intent by typing keyword in very similar fashion to what you do on Google. And so in this study, what has been shown is that usually the first product on Google search in the US here, as you can see, gets around a 30% click-through rate. So by click-through rate, what we mean is that out of the people that make a search, 30% of those people would go on to click on the product that appears on the first position. And what's interesting, and what you can see in this graph, is how this actually decelerates and decreases. It actually follows what's called the Zipf's law, in the sense that the second ranking product, as you can see, or search result, would get half what the first one got, right? So you can see here that it's almost 15%. And then the third one would usually get 1/3 of what the first one got, right? You can see here that it's 10%, and so on and so forth. And actually, again, this is something that's really, really similar to what happens on Amazon. So what this means is that you don't want to be here. You don't want to be at position 20 or even 15, right? Imagine the results that you would get would you be in the top 5, right? Or even top 3. And this is all the more true that, as you guys must have noticed, recently on the search results on Amazon, sometimes on the top of the fold, you have only virtually only sponsored results, right? You have the sponsored brand that takes almost 1/3 of the page or half of the page, and then you may end up having up to 3 sponsored products. And then you would need to scroll below the fold to find the first organically ranking products. So this really means that it's super important to get to those first 3 or first 5 organic positions. And so now if we want to jump back to the discussion of what are the basics of SEO or search engine optimization on Amazon, I would say that Amazon's ranking algorithm is, as you know, super sophisticated, but it's likely affected by what I would put into 2 separate buckets. The first one I would call item data quality. The second one I would call comparative data points. And there's a strong emphasis, as you can see here, on the comparative word. So let's talk about the first one, item data quality. What falls in it? So in item data quality, we refer to anything on the product detail page. So the title, the description, the bullet points, the backend search terms as well, the images or videos as well, the A+ content, and to some extent even the content of the reviews that people wrote on the product. And then the second bucket, the comparative data points, what we refer to there are things that are based on metrics, right? Such as price, reviews, ratings, but also sales velocity and sales rank, the conversion rates, the click-through rates, the return rates, the seller performance, and so on and so forth. And the reason we use the word comparative here is due to the fact that Amazon's ranking algorithm doesn't look at this data without taking into consideration the competitive environment. The truth is that when Amazon looks at your products, it looks at its price, at its rating, and so forth. It also compares it to other products you're competing with. And this means that if you're trying to rank for a specific keyword, what Amazon would do is that it would compare your data points to other products that are trying to compete for that same keyword. And that's the reason why both those optimizations, they start with research and data. So talking about the first bucket, item data quality. And again, remember that it's anything around product detail page, right? Title, description, bullet points, and so forth. So when it comes to item data quality and how you can use it to nail your SEO game, so I would say that the first approach is researching new keywords that are relevant to the product listing, right? So say that you're selling a toddler toy product. What you want to do is start with researching keywords that are relevant to this kind of product. How would you approach doing that? There are tons of ways of doing it, and we can go through a few examples. But typically, something you should do is start by looking at what others are doing, right? What the top ranking products are doing. And so looking at this as an example, something that you may do is go to Amazon.com, for instance, right? And search for toddler toys. And as you do that, what I'd recommend doing is actually extracting results from this page, right? You usually would have 48 purely organic slots on the first page, per page. And so this is something that you should do maybe on the first 3 pages. Why? The reason is that you need to know what top performing products are doing, right? If a really well performing product is using specific keywords at a specific order and so forth, that can give you an idea as to what you should use on yours, right? You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You need to start by looking at what the top performing products are doing. So that's a way of approaching research. Something else that's super important is to optimize the listing following Amazon's content guidelines and your brand story, right? So as you know, Amazon, they tell you that in the title, you should capitalize the first letters, you should use numbers as numerals in the bullet points, you should use this many characters, and so on and so forth. So all these things are the kind of basics that needs to be checked. And then the third point is something quite interesting that I'm not sure that a lot of people are doing. And it pertains to A/B testing things. So what I mean by A/B testing is that you should do some changes on your product detail page and then actually assess the impact it has on your performance. And if the impact is positive, then great, the A/B test was positive. If it was negative, then you should move on to another test, and so on and so forth. So here, what's important is to A/B test changes in the listing and see how they impact your organic rankings with the end goal of basically building the best product page. So instead of just driving blind and putting a specific keyword in your title or description without any sense of the impact it has, the actual good approach of doing this is to do the changes that you want, then use a keyword rank tracking tool that would allow you to monitor this performance organically and gauge if the change you made had the positive impact or not. Then the fourth point pertains to analyzing competitors and benchmarking against top performance. So it touches on what I mentioned earlier. I would approach this in 2 ways. The first way is that I would start from the list of the most important keywords that are highly relevant to my product, right? So toddler toys is probably a highly relevant keyword or seed keyword. Short tail, that's pertaining to a product in the toy space for toddlers. And so when taking other relevant keywords such as toddler toy, what I would do is that I would look at the products that are ranking well, page 1, page 2, analyze them, their title, description, bullet points, how many characters are being used, what are the words that are being used, and benchmark things. Then a second thing I would do as well is, instead of starting from the keyword results, I would start from the bestseller ranks. So as you know, Amazon, they're kind enough to provide you a metric that they call the Amazon bestsellers rank that's supposed to reflect the ranking of a product in a given category in terms of sales. So what this means is that if you look at the top 100 selling products through a BSR, it would give you a sense of those that are doing well, and it would, to some extent, it would give you a sense of their market share. And so just start from the top ranking ones in terms of BSR, right? These guys are probably already doing super well. So it means that they nailed something and they did something super well. So start there and learn from what they did. So if we take the example of what we mentioned around A/B testing ideal listing details by looking at organic ranking data. So here the idea is that you would go to Seller Central, you would make a change, and then you would come to a keyword tracker in a tool that you would be using to see how it would have impacted your rankings, right? Here in this example, if you see that these guys jumped from position 12 on page 1 to position 8 overnight on November the 16th, 2019, then it likely means that either they made a positive change in their product page that has helped them reach that position, or maybe they've had an increase in sales velocity stemming from a phrase match or exact match of that search query. Another interesting example is here from November 21st to November 22nd. They literally jumped from position 9 to position 1. Toys for Babies, similarly, they jumped from position 22 to position 5. So this is the kind of approach that should be done when A/B testing changes. You go to your keyword rankings and you see the impact it has. And it's actually something you can do on your computer as well, right? If you're using a tracker that tracks any product on Amazon, you can do the same on your computers. Keep a tab on the A/B tests they do, see the impact it has. It would give you some sort of an inspiration. Now, let's move on to the second bucket, which is around using data points to nail your SEO game. By looking at these data points through a competitive approach, by looking at the competitive landscape, basically. So here, the approach I would recommend doing is, once you research which keywords to optimize for, you should actually rank order them in terms of priority based on competitive and market dynamics. Namely, there are two main ones that I'm referring to here. The first one is search volume data, right? So you may have a strategy where you want to focus on maybe a lot of long tail search queries that don't have a huge search volume, maybe in the hundreds per month and something like that. And then your end goal is to rank for as many long tail search ones as possible. Or a strategy in which you want to do super well for a short tail search query that has a really massive volume, right? And also, looking at search volume data is important, because if you're hesitating between 2 or 5 different keywords, then this can help you know which ones to focus on the most, right? You know that eventually you're limited in terms of how much space and how many characters and words you can use in your listings. So at some point, as you do really well your optimization and you start wondering whether you should use toddler toys or boys toys or girl toys, well, you can look at the search volume data of each of these keywords and try to understand which one should be prioritized. And then the second thing, which for sure the majority, like 99% of people don't think about, is looking at the keyword difficulty and the keyword relevancy. All right, so listen up what I mean by this. The first thing I think people should start looking at is at pricing data. The second thing is reviews and ratings data. And the third thing is competition intensity data. All right, so maybe to look at a few examples, let's look at the keyword difficulty and relevancy bucket that we mentioned, price, reviews, and ratings. And let's pick the example of toddler toys. So if you were to go to Amazon.com and typed toddler toys, first of all, you would see that there are more than 100,000 indexed products that are fighting for this keyword, right? That are in this space. And something that becomes interesting to do afterwards is, as you crunch the data on the first 5 or 7 pages of search results for that keyword, you want to try to come up with median, averages, minimums, and maximums, and so forth around metrics like price, ratings, and stars rating. So looking at toddler toys on a median basis, products that are ranking for it in the first 5 pages of search results on Amazon are priced at $17.47. All right. So the median, what it means is that 50% of the products are above 17.47 and 50% are below it. So what this means is that if I were following an algorithmically or statistically driven approach towards launching a product or just optimizing a product, then I know that if I want to do well on the toddler toy space, I'd be better off pricing my product probably at $17, right? If I price it too high, I'm not likely to be generating a lot of traffic. But what becomes more interesting is, instead of looking at the entirety of the first 5 pages or something like that, it's better to look at page 1, right? Remember what we've seen on the chart earlier. It's super important to be on the first page positions, keyword rankings, because then you have the CTR that drops drastically as you go down in the ranks, right? So something that becomes interesting to do is to look at page 1. Well, guess what? On page 1 for toddler toys, the highest priced product is at $59.97. All right. The median is $19. And 75% of the products on page 1 ranking organically for toddler toys are priced under 29.86, right? So what this means is that, algorithmically speaking, it's just impossible to rank on page 1 for toddler toys with a product priced above $60, right? Just the competitive dynamics make it so. And Amazon's algorithm has decided so. And so this kind of infamous black box isn't as much of a black box anymore when you have this kind of approach, because you have the answers based on data and based on metrics. This also teaches us that the ideal price range is likely to be anywhere between $19 and $30 if you really want to optimize your margins. You ideally want to be in this kind of range, right? But also something that's interesting to see is the fact that 75% of the products on page 1 for toddler toys have at least 500 ratings. Imagine that. That's huge, right? 500 ratings and a 4.3 stars rating. All right. So the reason it's super important to look at ratings is that, again, similarly, it shows you how, on a kind of midterm and long-term basis, how you're able to sustain a specific rank for a specific keyword, right? Forget about the kind of early boost that you can get from product launches and running campaigns and stuff like that. That kind of stuff is unsustainable, right? It's great to do early on, but it's not something that's gonna ensure that you will maintain a good performance over time for a specific keyword. So what's important then is, when you're comparing keywords that you want to optimize for organically, and even those for which you want to be bidding, right? Maybe you want to bid on boys' toys, on girls' toys, on toddler toys, and so forth. It's important to look at this kind of data and see to what extent your product profile is compatible with what you see here in this kind of metrics, right? This can also help you with your marketing strategy, your procurement strategy, and so forth. If you know that you need 500 ratings, statistically speaking, to optimize your odds for being on page 1 for a specific keyword, then all of a sudden, you know how many sales you need to make in order to get there. If you assume that 5% of your orders translate into a rating, then dividing 500 by 5%, you would get you would get 10,000 unit sales or something like that. So you know that you need to make 10,000 sales to get there. And so based on your cost per sale on a blended CPS basis, you know how much you need to allocate in terms of marketing budget to get there. And then based on the search volume insight that you have around the keyword, say here 40,000 monthly hits, and assumptions you can make around click-through rate and conversion rates, all of a sudden, you know how much time it would take you to get there based on the kind of demand and volume that exists on the market for it. And so when you look at this data kind of visually, it becomes much more striking, right? Based on, again, the same example, looking at this chart here, you can see how there's a strong concentration of products priced between $10, maybe all the way to $30, right? Seems like these are the ones that are most likely to be close to 0 or 1 here on the y-axis, meaning being in the top positions. And the opposite holds true for the correlation between number of ratings and position. You can see that in all likelihood, you would need north of 500, as you can see here, or maybe even north of 1,000 in order for you to be in the top rankings. So again, Amazon is really driven by algorithms and data. It's really super important. So another thing that I want to talk about that I think people don't look at that much is competition intensity. What I mean by that is, to what degree is a keyword, a segment, a niche, whatever you want, to what degree is it competitive? To some extent, we can answer this question by looking at data on a high level, such as what we've seen at here, or what we've looked at here in terms of reviews, on a median, average, and quartile basis. But something else that I like to look at is what I like to call gorilla products. So what I mean by that is, when you look at a specific keyword, you gotta answer the question, how many gorilla products, like these massive, gigantic, powerful products that have so many ratings and reviews, what percentage do they represent typically on the first page of search results, right? Because it's hard to outpace them, right? If your product has barely 10 reviews or is just launching, and you're going after a space that's dominated by products that have north of 500 or 1,000 ratings, these guys are going to continue doing sales, right? So how do you plan on outpacing them? Especially if you don't have that much of a, unique or kind of outstanding product that stands out of the crowd. So it's important as well to kind of answer this question. As you rank order the keywords, the niches, the segments you're going after, you want to also look at the kind of competition intensity and the percentage of this kind of gorilla products on page one. Ideally, you want to go after keywords that aren't dominated on the first page by products that have thousands or multiple hundreds of reviews and ratings. All right, so now let's move on to more advanced use cases of data. I think what we covered here so far is already super insightful in terms of smart ways of leveraging data. But I think something else that people don't usually think about is, for instance, the fact that you can unveil keywords that are likely to be driving organic sales to competitors. That's something that can be done, guys. Amazon doesn't tell you what keywords are driving sales, except for products on which you're running ads, right? As you export your customer search term report data from Seller Central, for instance, you can get insights around keywords that have been driving sales to your products based on what you bid on. But you don't have this information on your competitors, right? But the thing is that it's actually doable. And I'll show you an example. Typically, if you look at the keyword rankings of a competitor, and you see that this competitor is ranking really well, top of the fold, page one for specific keywords, then this hasn't come out of the blue, right? The reason they're doing that well is likely because Amazon's algorithm have detected signals around the fact that these keywords are driving sales to that product. So it's possible to unveil them. So second point, optimizing ACoS or return on ad spend with insights from organic ranking data. Again, we'll look at an example, but basically, let me tell you this. if you're ranking well, top of the fold for some keywords, then you may decide not to bid on them anymore, right? Or maybe at least reduce your bids and instead redirect that ad spend towards other keywords for which you may not be ranking as well. Third point, unveiling the daily sales velocity required to be at specific ranks, then securing it with ads, promotions, and so forth. All right, so what I mean by that is as you monitor and measure your organic rankings on a daily basis, you can take that and you can compare it to what it correlates with in terms of sales velocity. All right. And as you do that, you would be able to know over time how much unit sales, how many unit sales per day you need in order for you to be maybe on page 1 or top 10 positions for a specific keyword. And based on that insight, you may want to make sure that you secure that kind of position by running maybe just what's necessary in terms of ads. And then fourth point, you can also again know which products to launch and how to price them for optimal sales and margins potential. I think this touches a lot on what we mentioned earlier around looking at keyword search results, looking at pricing data, and so forth. It's something that you can do and apply to know which products to launch in which segments and what's the kind of optimal pricing mix to have for them. All right, so let's look at a few just visual examples of advanced use cases to boost performance, right? So this data was taken on an Under Armour running shorts for women. So as you can see, the product was doing super well organically for keywords such as Under Armour women's shorts, running shorts for women, women's running short, and so on and so forth, ranking literally on position 1 for this keyword. All right, so one example of advanced use cases of this data is to bid on this keyword only when it's necessary, right? Because if I'm Under Armour and I'm already doing super well for this keyword, well, unless I have a massive advertising budget and I just want to dominate the space and as many positions and digital shelf as possible, unless I want that or I'm in that situation, then I'd be better off maybe focusing my ad spend on other keywords for which I'm not doing that well, right? And bid on these ones only when necessary, only for instance, when my organic ranking drops. I can also, as I mentioned earlier, assess the impact of the changes I make on the product detail page and see how they impact my rankings and measure that. I can also measure the impact that my sales velocity has on my rankings. I can understand which keywords are driving organic sales, right? If this product is consistently ranking first for running shorts for women, then you can be pretty sure that it's a keyword that's driving a huge amount of sales to it, right? Otherwise, Amazon's algorithm wouldn't rank it on the first position for it. And you can also use this to benchmark your performance against competition, right? And so on kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, if we look at this little screenshot here, you can see that there are a lot of other interesting keywords for which these running shorts from Under Armour aren't doing as well, right? For instance, youth athletic shorts or athletic shorts youth, or running compression shorts, or yeah, and a few others like this, right? You can see that the product is usually in page 2 or even page 4 for some of those, right? So again, if I were in this guy's shoes, what I would do is that based on this insight, I would start bidding on this keyword. And so the reason, again, if this hasn't been clear, the reason I'm talking about bidding on keywords and correlating that with the discussion around organic rankings and SEO on Amazon is the fact that, as you guys know, there's this massive correlation between advertising and organic performance on Amazon, which is great and which plays to merchants' advantages on Amazon, as it doesn't exist elsewhere, right? On Google, if you bid on a specific keyword, your landing page isn't surprisingly and magically starts ranking organically well for it as well. But that's something that happens on Amazon, and so it's really important to benefit out of it. Something else I want to show you is that we crunch a lot of data at Datahawk, and a recommendation that I have for you guys as well is to try as much as possible to make it to the top 5 or top 10 positions in terms of bestsellers rank on Amazon. What the chart that you're seeing here highlights daily changes in BSR or bestseller rank in the baby and toddler toys category, and specifically looking at the top 100. And so what you can quite easily see visually here is the fact that the products that make it to the top 5 or 10 positions, right, these first few lines here, you can see that they manage quite well to maintain their performance, right? But as soon as you drop out of the top 10 or something like that, it gets totally messy, right? It gets in, products go up, products go down, it's totally messy. And so this speaks to the importance of making it to the top 5, top 10, because then your product becomes much harder to displace. And you get just such a huge boost from Amazon's infamous flywheel effect. I think some of it is kind of self-explanatory. For instance, as you make it to the first position in a given category on Amazon, well, you're gonna get the top seller badge, and that's gonna affect the click-through rate. People that type toddler toys, if they see the best sellers badge on your product, boom, they're more likely to click on it. So you just get such a massive CTR boost. But also you get a boost from all these kind of consumers that have some sort of original approach of making purchases on Amazon, where they won't necessarily do it through an intent basis, right? By typing toddler toys. They may do it by exploring Amazon's homepage and maybe going to the toy section and kind of just browsing things in a discovery approach. And as you have a good BSR, you're gonna appear in the first results again, not necessarily in terms of keyword search results, but in terms of how you appear in this kind of discovery approach. So it's important as well. Another final example of kind of using data to boost your performance is by looking at sales, right? So this is something that I mentioned earlier, but this is just a screenshot to kind of highlight what I wanted to show you, what I talked to you about earlier. So here's something that's interesting is to see that usually when this product sells 3 units a day, or maybe a unit between 1 and 2 daily units, it usually ranks anywhere between position 14 and maybe 12 or 13 in this category in terms of BSR. But you can see that as it starts selling 4 units, or maybe even 6 units, it tends to jump either the same day or in the following day to the position 8, more or less, right? So by looking at this kind of data, maybe exporting it to Excel, crunching it, running some sort of regression analysis and so forth, you may be able to build a formula that helps you kind of predict what kind of sales velocity you would need in order for you to be at a specific rank. And then all of a sudden you would know that you would need here, for instance, to make maybe 10 unit sales in order for you to make it to the top 5, or maybe 20 unit sales in order for you to be on position 1. And also, most importantly, you can use this to make sure that you maintain your performance. Maybe you don't want to drop out of the top 10 or the top 5. Well, by knowing how much sales you need to make on a daily basis, then you can kind of ensure that this performance that you have stays there over time. So I think that's pretty much it. We covered everything that I wanted to discuss with you today here, guys. In case you want to give a try to Datahawk, many of the screenshots and examples I've given you are taken from there. You can go to our website at datahawk.co. Use this discount code to get a 25% discount for your first 3 months of subscription. On top of that, we do have a free plan, a lifetime free plan that allows you to do a lot of things on our platform for free.
Thank you so much for this interesting presentation. So you mentioned it's super important to be in the top 5 or top 3 regarding, for example, the bestseller rank. So what are your best tips to give to sellers how to optimize their listings in a way to achieve those positions?
So eventually, in terms of bestseller rank, it reflects sales velocity on Amazon, right? So in order for you to be at a specific BSR position, you want to increase your sales. So the first step is to understand what kind of sales you would need in order for you to be at a specific BSR position. Once you do that, the question becomes, how can you drive more sales, right? And there the answer is, of course, a lot of things, some of which we discussed, but you gotta optimize your product page, you gotta optimize your pricing, you gotta optimize your keyword ranks, you gotta optimize your advertising, and so on and so forth.
Okay, and regarding to the product page, you use the term item data quality points. Based on your experience, which of the points are usually less optimized, which would give other sellers an opportunity to beat those competitors?
Right. So usually, I think that people don't make a good use of the kind of space they have in their product page, most importantly in the bullet points and description. Something also that's quite surprising is looking at the percentage of products that are on page one for specific keywords that just don't have A+ content, right? And these kind of examples are low-hanging fruits. You want to make sure that you have a minimum of 5 images, ideally more. You want to make sure you have high quality images, lifestyle images, A+ content, that you make full use of the space you have in the bullet point section to put all the relevant keywords, and also write good copy, right? Not just blend in keywords that you want to rank for there, but also try to make a good, attractive copy that would drive conversions.
Okay, cool. And when we go back to the sales, is there a specific rate of organic sales and ad sales you are usually going after, or would suggest sellers to go after?
I think that depends on the life stage of the product. So naturally, early on in its life cycle, as the product launches initially, of course your ACoS is going to be through the roof in the hundreds percent, but over time it's going to decrease, right? And so over time, I think that where you want to get your ACoS to maybe is in the sub 20% threshold, and where you want to get your TACoS, or total advertising cost of sales, so on a blended basis, is maybe ideally sub 10% or in the ballpark of 5%, right?
All right. And I have a question about, so you work with a lot of data, and you said there is an average which could, like, you look at the data and then you try to adjust all your listings. Have your algorithms one day got a hiccup and they said, Othman, look at this listing. It has like terrible bullet points, terrible, like, I don't know, pictures. It goes out of the averages, but it's making a lot of sales. Have you seen anything like this? And if yes, why it's happening?
That's a good point. I think it does happen, but it happens, as I mentioned, only on products that have a specific event that occurs, right? So let me give you an example. If you take the example of a queen size mattress, all right, so that's a keyword for which competition is super fierce, obviously, and for which on page one, if I recall correctly, the highest price product is around $500 or $550, right? So what this means is that brands like Casper and Tuft & Needle and Purple Mattress that have products priced north of $500 or maybe even north of $800, it's super hard for them to make it on page one for that keyword, right? But what may happen is that if they make a huge, massive boost in terms of advertising on one of their product, or especially if the product is still new, then it's totally possible for them to maybe even make it to the top 5 positions on page one. However, this is unlikely to be sustained over time, because it's just that the algorithm is gonna give a much bigger importance to the kind of sales velocity that's happening there. But given the fact that it's a sales velocity and momentum that's unsustained in time because it stemmed from a really aggressive ad budget that was naturally limited to a certain amount of time, then at some point it would go back to the normal or the averages.
All right. Thank you very much. And could you give us a glimpse what is Datahawk? You already mentioned that all these graphs in the presentation, they are from Datahawk, or Datahawk. So you are really data geek. Can you give us understanding what this tool is doing and how sellers can, make a use of it and make more sales?
Sure, absolutely. So our mission here, Augustas, is to help people better pilot their businesses on Amazon and on other channels. We think data is key, and that's the reason we have data on our company name. And we're basically in the mission of building a business management platform that helps people and merchants of all sizes better pilot their businesses on Amazon and other channels. The challenge is that data is super scattered. The challenge is that people need to be everywhere. The challenge is that information is key and is super hard to collect. The challenge is that we live in a world that's driven by algorithms. And so our mission is basically to kind of detect the signals, collect the data, and make things easier to access and to take action on for our customers and users.
All right. And what kind of tools are included in your software?
So we have 5 solutions. The first one pertains to search engine optimization. It includes a keyword rank tracker, keyword research or generation tool, and a listing quality assessment tool that helps you assess to what extent any product complies with Amazon content guidelines. The second solution we have pertains to what we call product data analytics. It allows you to monitor changes in product data for any product on Amazon in things such as price, ratings, stars rating, buy box data, bestsellers rank, title description, bullet points, every change that occurs on these kind of data points. And it also provides an alerting solution that helps you set up alerts to be notified when there's a specific event that occurs. So say that you have a hijacker on your product. You can get notified of it, or your computer drops their price below a certain threshold. You can get notified of it. You have a critical rating, you get notified of it, and so forth. The third solution we have pertains to market research and intelligence, where we help answer questions such as how much sales is a product doing? So we provide estimated sales for any product on Amazon, or questions such as what we've seen, what's the ideal price for me in order to optimize my odds of being on page 1 for a specific keyword on Amazon, answering competitive dynamics on specific segments and keywords and so forth. The fourth solution we have pertains to sales reporting. So there you're able to connect your seller account, your Seller Central account, and this would give you access to an advanced dashboard that shows you your daily sales on both an account level and async level in a really easy and intuitive way. And you can start drawing correlations and extracting insights out of it. And then the fifth solution is something similar, but applied to the advertising space. So again, similarly, you connect your Amazon advertising account, and you would get super advanced dashboards with all the necessary metrics, so clicks, impressions, ACoS, ad spend, attribution of paid versus organic sales, and so forth, in nice scorecards and charts, with the ability to aggregate data on a weekly or monthly basis. And so, yeah, overall, our strength there is really the kind of data historization that we make super powerful and easy, and making it easier to access this data and look at it.
All right. Thank you very much, Otman.
Thank you, Augustas.
Yeah,
Thank you, Lisa.
everyone who wants to check Datahawk, they will find links below. And good luck in your business. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
If you're looking for a tool that helps to manage your Amazon FBA business, check out Datahawk. You'll find the link below in the video description. And now I invite you to watch other video where Otman from Datahawk explains how Datahawk, how their platform and their software works, and how does it help Amazon sellers, and what tools you can use inside their app.